Hello everyone, welcome back to another part. I hope you guys did some experimentation with different lights in Unreal Engine to see how they work, so that we have a little bit more experience to light our scenes properly in this part. So in this one, we're going to talk about Environment Light Mixer. This is where we're going to create most of our lights in, and I'll also share with you some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years of my experience in lighting a scene. And finally, we're gonna light our scene to make it a moody, gloomy environment for the final render. So let's get into Unreal Engine. So here we have our level. Let's go back to our 2 panels preview. Now let's change this to Sunny Camera, and let's change this to Lit again, because we want to visualize most of our things on with our camera. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Now if your viewport, if your Unreal Engine editor starts to lag a little bit because of the 2 panel, what you can do here is for the second panel you can change this to unlit, and that will make it a little bit better. But you will not see all the lights in this over here, but you can still see it over here. Now, first of all, what we want to do is turn off our auto exposure for our camera as well. So let's just go into our camera and let's search for exposure here. To turn off camera exposure, we need to turn these settings on for now. And we'll also turn on minimum and maximum EV over here. Now let's change this to manual. And now everything will be pitch black. So for our max EV, let's change this to about -2. And min EV about -2, and see if it helps a little bit. Let's bring our exposure up, or maybe even these minimum and maximum values up a little. Let's just leave it at -2 and -2 for now. Now I think this exposure is a little bit better. You can see nothing is being blown out, but nothing is in the pure black shadows as well. After that, we are done with our manual exposure. So let's go into our lighting tab. Before we do that, let's actually group these nicely. So we have our BP church. Let's select our other static mesh as well, which we have placed down. Let's group them together and let's call it building and props. So everything is nice. We have this instance foliage actor as well, which is basically all our foliage combined together. We can put this in our landscape because it's technically related to the landscape over here. Now let's go into our lighting group. We're going to delete everything that we have in here. So delete everything. Everything will be pitch black, but we're going to create our new lights again. So go into window and you'll see Environment Light Mixer over here. Click this over there and you'll get this new window where you can create different lights. But I want to dock this over here. So drag this over there from here and then dock it over here, so we can just tab around Content Browser and Environment Light Mixer with just one panel. Now let's create all these together. So we have Skylight, Atmosphere Light, Sky Atmosphere, Volumetric Cloud, and then High Fog. Now we have placed down every single thing, and this looks even a little bit better over there. Now as you can see, there is something wrong with the ground. So let's actually change this back to lit and see what is the cause of it. I think it is probably the directional light. So yes, it is the directional light. It is not casting on the ground, but we can fix this later on. Let's move everything to lighting for now. Let's tone this back down to about 10. And now we have our skylight, and it's already casting real-time capture. So right now we're gonna tweak each of their settings for now. First of all, let's find our good directional place. So maybe somewhere we can see some of the shadows on the church itself, kind of like that. So hold Control L and move it around. Something like that might do. One tip is that never have your light shining completely behind the camera. So let's say we have our sun from the front like this. It can create some flat image, but if you angle it right, you can still make it work a little bit, but most of the time you don't want this light to be shining directly at your subject from behind the camera, because everything can look super flat like around here. Instead, what you want to do is angle a little bit from the side or from the back if you really want. So you can, with this, you can actually change what your mood is, what the mood of the scene should be, by just tweaking your directional light direction. So if let's find a sweet spot that we want. Probably I do like this from the back. Or maybe from the side can be nice as well. So let's find our sweet spot. Maybe this looks quite good. So we're going to leave this like this for now. Another thing we want to do is go into our exponential high fog and search for volumetric. And let's turn on volumetric fog, and you'll see how this is being affected as a volumetric fog now. And what we can do is we can change our albedo over here to change our fog color. So maybe something towards the cold side like this would do. And let's turn off this, and we can change our fog density around like this. We want some type of foggy weather. So to do this, go into our volumetric cloud, and we have our cloud settings over here. So in our volumetric cloud, we can change the bottom layer of our clouds like this, where if we want more shadows or not, and we change our layer height as well. And one thing cool about Environment Light Mixer is that you can change all the settings that we have for all the lights under here. Now it can get a little bit confusing, but let's go into our directional light first. Let's tone down our intensity a bit, and we're gonna create a more soft light. So right now we don't have those settings over here, so let's just select our directional light, and we have our source angle over here. So let's make this a little bit bigger like that, and we're going to change our light color to something a little bit more bluish. So just a little bit like that, and that should look good. And we have our exponential high fog still, which we can change how much of a fog we want. So let's go into here, and we have scattering distribution over here. This is how much your light is being distributed, and we want to increase this a little bit further like that. Maybe let's change this directional light color back to something a little bit yellow. I think we kind of like that. Or maybe just pure white. A little bit yellow. I think that looks okay. So let's go back to our skylight, and we have our intensity scale over here. We can tone this down to 0.2 and it will be really dark, or we can just have it even more like 5 and it will be super bright. But again, we just want around 1, and see if we can change our other settings. Sorry, indirect lighting intensity doesn't do really much of a thing on our project, so we're not going to use it. But for our directional light, what we can do is we have a volumetric scattering intensity. Let's bring this up a little to get some like light shafts like these. Maybe with light shafts, but we can rotate our directional light around to get a different type of look. I do actually like these light shafts that are forming in between the trees. Kind of cool. But I think we're gonna leave it as how it was before, where it's shining that rooftop. So we're gonna move this around. More like this, and then reduce the volumetric scattering intensity around like this. Or we can just move around our directional light until you've found somewhere that you like. So maybe around here would do for now. We can further adjust it later on. Maybe even change but manually like this without using a Control L. Sometimes it's a little bit better because you can actually know where you're rotating. So something like that. So right now our ground is really dark. So let's go into our material instance for the landscape and change our specular to 0.3 for all of them, maybe. Let's see, 0.3. And where do we have another 1.3? See if it helps. This is still super dark, so maybe we need to bring this up to like 1. Now this doesn't really look good, so let's just go back to 0.3, 0.3, and 0.3 over here. Let's just save this for now. And we'll tweak this light setup a little bit more later on. So I think I am liking how this looks, and we can actually go into our sky atmosphere and we can change our some of the settings over here. Maybe our Rayleigh scattering, make this a little bit warmer. That. And we have our scattering scale as well. We can reduce it a little bit like this, or make it really soft as well. But I think I'm gonna leave it around this amount. And we have our absorption scale as well, which we're not gonna mess with too much. And in art direction, we also have a few stuff, like if you want this to be affected by the high fog or not. But right now it doesn't really do much because we have very low high fog right now. So what we can do is we can bring this fog density up like this. We have our fog in scattering color as well. We can change this to something like this, or even yellow. I think the yellow might be a little bit good, so I'm gonna leave it as this. I think this is looking good. What can we do? Oh, I put the mannequin into the lighting over there. So right now, let's actually have our landscape material adjusted so that we can have some brightness controls for our base color. So to do this, let's go scroll down and let's go into our parent material over here, and here we'll have our nodes again. So we want to control our brightness of all of our textures. So let's actually add, let's drag this and add a multiply node, and then we'll add a scalar parameter again. So for this one, we'll call it brightness 1, and we can change this to, we can just change the default value to 1, and then set this layer to layer 1. Let's plug this in, and let's plug this in over to layer 1. So we want to duplicate this again for 3 different textures. So let's place it down here. Let's add into here and place over here. And this one, we're going to name it brightness 2 and layer 2. Let's duplicate it once more, the last time. And let's put this into our over there and here. So let's smooth these so it's a little bit more organized. This one should be brightness 3. Oh, this one should be brightness 3 and layer 3. Now let's save, and we'll have our brightness control for every single texture. So let's go into our first brightness. We can change this to about 3, and now this will brighten it up a little bit. And as for layer 2 as well, we can change this brightness to something like 3. These are rocks, so let's change our dirt layer. Do this like about 5. You'll see this being a little bit bright, but I think that's too bright. Maybe 3 might be good. I think that's okay. And we can change our desaturation of our green. This. Like that would do. And let's save this. And let's save our landscape material as well. So now this is looking pretty good. Now we're going to tweak some of our assets that we have scattered here. So let's actually go into our clovers over there, because the clovers are really bright right now. So let's go into our Megascans 3D plants, and we have clovers over here, and we have 2 textures, but we don't want the billboard. We want the material instance clovers over here, which doesn't have the billboard in the suffix. So in here, what we can do is we can tone down our overall intensity like this, and see what it does. It doesn't do much. Maybe color overlay, and we can change this to a little bit darker like this, and darker green. Kind of towards the yellow side a little, and like that. That looks okay. That's not too bright anymore. So I think this is looking good. So in the next part, we're going to talk about post-processing volume and try to tone our colors accordingly using the post-processing volume. But before we do that, I want to make sure that our composition is quite right in this part. So we're going to place down like this. Change these so that it looks quite right. Now we can put this down a little bit more. Kind of like that. Or maybe even behind this wall like that. Yeah, I do like that. Okay. And we'll place down more props later on in this lecture. But for now, we're going to save it as it is. And this is looking really good already. I think it is quite promising. So in the next one, we're going to talk about post-processing volume. And I'll see you there.